Welcome to Challenge Accepted. I'm Thomas, and I'm here with Frank.
Hey everybody. Now, does that sound like the Truman Show intro? Like he says it in Truman Show, I think.
Oh,
Doesn't he?
does he really?
Yeah, I think so.
That was not even on purpose.
Get
Uh,
ready, guys. Challenge coming. We keep doing that to each other. We keep like thinking of a movie or something like that. Like, oh, that's a future challenge. We'll never get through them
exactly.
all.
Yeah. Well, which is great. We're gonna have a show forever, which
Yeah.
is gonna be perfect. But yes, we are talking about a awesome show that you challenged me to called Good Omens. I had been meaning to watch it for the longest time. I'm a massive Neil Gaiman fan, and I had not found time to actually go out and watch this. But you challenged me to season one, episode three, Hard Times.
Yes.
Yeah, man. Yeah. What do you think before we kick it off with the breakdown?
So the reason I wanted to challenge this specific episode is because a lot of the episodes are split into two halves, as you can tell. This one was as well, right? Literally halfway through the intro, like theme song kicks in. It's real weird, but
Oh, seriously, like, it's like 28 minutes in. I was
yeah.
like, this show's almost over. Like, what?
Yeah. So it always does that. So it kind of gives you something special in the beginning. And Sandman kind of does this too on Netflix. But then the second half continues the main story that's going out through the entire episode or season. And I really want to do that. And if you're thinking about how you would read a book, that happens all the time in books where it's like, oh, we're suddenly going to do this for a little bit, but then it ties in later on. So I thought this was a really good way to kind of introduce you to the characters, and then hopefully that would hook you for everything else.
I like that. Okay, because that was my question. When I first started watching it, I'm like, why this episode? Like, I was really curious what the thought process was.
Mhm.
But I'm happy. I started at episode one and then
Okay.
got to three. And I'm happy I did it that way. But when I
Yeah.
got to three, I was like, what was Frank thinking here with
Yeah.
this time jumpy, wibbly wobbly kind of episode, which is very Neil Gaiman. But
Yes.
yeah, I loved it. I thought it was great.
Yeah, I mean there is straight up a Sandman episode 2 that is exactly this, where they're
Oh
jumping through
yeah.
time and stuff like that. There are multiple shows that kind of lean on this premise where you see these two friends. So I thought like this is such a good way to be introduced to these characters, and more importantly their relationship, which will I think is going to be the focus of what we're going to be talking about in this episode, because it's important in this whole series.
Right on. Got it. All right. Well, let's not keep everybody waiting. Let's go with our 2 minute breakdown and kick this bad boy off.
All right, I'm doing the breakdown starting now. I'm going to kind of run down the entire intro too. So the idea is that the end of the world is coming. Yay. So we need an antichrist. Yay. Don't tell my priest. And so the demons are like, okay, we're going to get our baby in the hands of a senator so that it's like the worst possible thing. And they are bumbling idiots. Everybody is. And so they accidentally give the antichrist to some like normal folks, and the normal baby goes to the senator. Fast forward to the events that we're at right now. There is an angel and a demon that are supposed to be kind of progressing this whole story. And over time, because they are both kind of the original angel and demon that have been on Earth, they have developed a friendship and realize that they can work well together and kind of help each other out. And in this episode, we travel through time and see how that works. In the beginning, they're very reluctant, especially Aziraphale. I can't ever say his name right, but anyways, he's kind of like, I don't know, you're a demon. The other one's like, come on. So then over
Yeah.
time, we see that it actually benefits both of them to work together, and then we start to see that they start to actually trust each other more than their own sources.
Nice.
Um,
1 minute.
yeah, God, I know, right? And so that's kind of where we end things off. We see that they trust each other more. Then we're in present day, and we're in the middle of this storyline where both of them are relying on their sources, which is this one witch hunter, to go and find this boy, which is the Antichrist, in the wrong place. And then we find out that the witch hunter's new apprentice is going to be sent out to track things, and that the Antichrist stumbles across a witch who is following a box of prophecies from her ancestor. By the way, her ancestor is a witch that actually told the future and is actually the one that wrote this book narratively. And the little apprentice witch hunter is his ancestors actually the witch hunter that killed her ancestor, so they've been tied through destiny. And
Oh yeah.
that is about it. And there's a hellhound that's funny. All right, that's about it.
Yep. And then lemon drops at the end.
Lemon drops at the end. True.
You're right. Nice. You had 5 seconds to spare. Well done, man. Yeah, I didn't know how you were going to do it because when I was watching this, as you know, I get pretty OCD about things, and I was taking crazy details, and I was like, okay, England, 74 AD, and whatever,
Yeah.
Babylonia, like whatever, and I was getting super in the weeds about it,
Yeah.
and I was like, how are we gonna do this breakdown? But you nailed it, and you kind of just touched on the main points, which is probably and is the right way to do it.
Well, let's talk about let's break this our review of this episode down into as well. So let's talk about that first half. It starts off with the biblical story of we got Adam and Eve. A snake tempts Eve, and they're both banished from the Garden of Eden. We find out that Crowley, who's the demon that we're going to be following through this whole story, is the snake, and we find out that Aziraphale is the one that is supposed to be protecting the entrance to Eden and make sure that those two don't come back in with a fiery sword. But he's such a nice guy; he didn't want to leave them helpless, so he gave away his fiery sword, which
Right.
is a running joke throughout the entire series of like, didn't you have a fiery sword at one point? He's like, oh, I dropped it somewhere. Like,
Yeah,
nobody
yeah,
knows that he gave
it's
it to humanity.
somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just really liked how from the get go, and then we find out in season two, this is a bit of a spoiler for season two, that they actually knew each other as angels when they were both angels. Um,
Oh, don't tell me
yes.
anymore.
I'm going to
Oh,
just say that.
wow.
That's it.
That makes, I mean, that's fine because they do even reference it in this episode that that Crowley was an angel and that he was fallen, but not really fallen. He has this way about saying it where he's like, yeah, it just kind of happened. It wasn't
Yeah.
really my fault, you know. But I just love that character. David Tennant just
So
crushes it,
good.
and
Yes.
it's just perfect casting. And you see
Truly.
them go through time, and they are kind of friends, whether they want to admit it or not.
Right.
Whether they want to admit they like each other or not, they kind of are friends. And maybe they'll become more. I kind of feel like they will be, but it's it's just cool and it's really well done and it's
Yeah.
such a Neil Gaiman thing to show somebody going through time, right? Like in Sandman, there's that guy who shows up to the bar,
I
and
love
every
that
100
episode.
years he's supposed to meet up with Morpheus and tell them what he learns because he's immortal.
Mhm.
And yeah, and it's just felt so Neil Gaiman, but it's so good just to see how they are affecting humanity, but humanity is affecting them as well.
That's a very important fact that you just said. So first off, I want to kind of expand on you're talking about how cool David Tennant is as Crowley, but also he has a very good explanation of how cool Aziraphale is, and that it's like Aziraphale somehow has this innocence and unknowing about the world around him while still being the oldest being on the planet. Like he's still
Right.
so innocent to everything around him because he's just like, oh, I like line dancing. That's the thing that comes up later on is he's the only angel that knows how to dance because he's just
Yeah.
like dancing looks fun, and so he just learned dancing.
Or in this episode, crepes.
Yeah,
Right? He's like,
he
I
almost
just
dies
wanted the
from them.
best crepes. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So, what you said was really important. So, while the other angels and demons are frequently in their home bases and preparing for this gigantic war, these two are supposed to be thwarting each other back and forth, or thwarting the other side back and forth. But because they're on Earth the entire time doing it, they're enjoying crepes. Or Crowley he has his car that he freaking loves more than anything else, and so they start to embrace humanity in a way where they see like even heaven's like, we gotta have Armageddon. We've been gearing up for this war this whole time. It's the whole point. And he's like, yeah, but can't we just avoid it? And they really can. It's just they don't want
Right.
to. And so it's these two falling in love with humanity is why they're our last hope.
Yeah, absolutely. There were so many cool. Yeah, and I know this could be a touchy subject because there's a lot of religious base here, and I totally
Of
understand that.
course.
But there were so many good kind of maybe I don't know if this is even considered meta, but meta jokes
Yeah.
where they're at the ark and there you see all the animals kind of crawling in pairs of two towards the ark, and then at one
Yeah.
point Crowley goes, oh look, one of the unicorns is getting away, and
Ah,
it's just
you
like
got another
funny.
one.
Yeah, exactly, right. And they're like, okay, there's the explanation of why we don't have unicorns.
Yeah, and I like how
Or
it's good enough you've got one. No,
yeah,
it's really
yeah.
not.
Right. And as we know now, I mean, I haven't seen a unicorn. I think they're an animal of fiction.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just some of that stuff was so well done. I really, really dug it. And then just you get to see more of their relationship and more of their personalities through time as well. And I think that's
Yes.
what we've already kind of hinted at.
In season two, they actually go back through time a little bit more and kind of fill in because when we get to the Shakespeare one, which I think is the very first really turning point in their relationship, where finally Aziraphale, there it is, agrees, like, yeah, you know what, let's work together because like this just makes sense. And they both have to go to this small town and both have to do something. So they're like, why don't one of us go and do both things? The other one could enjoy London some more. They flip a
Right.
coin, and Aziraphale has to go. Now, we find out that in that conversation he says we've done this dozens of times beforehand by accident, and then you in season two they show a couple of those times, so you get a little
Oh,
bit more
nice.
fill in. But that's the first time where it's like let's work together, and then you learn through history later on in other episodes too that they've been going back and forth this entire time, just basically making both sides happy while just enjoying the crepes, you know.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like they're doing the bare minimum to make their bosses not catch on to them
Yes.
doing the bare minimum,
Yeah.
right? Like, yeah, and it's just it's great. It's just really well done writing. Of course, again, can't sing enough praise for Neil Gaiman,
Yes.
but it just is so smart, and the way Aziraphale kind of justifies some of the things that Crowley does and the way he looks at situations, it would totally make sense for the angel
Hmm.
and vice versa for Crowley. Like the way he
Yeah.
justifies different things, like why do we both need to go to Edinburgh? Like
Yeah.
you should just go, and then maybe you don't finish the job right because I got in the way. Like why do we
Exactly.
actually have to do the song and dance? Like
Yeah.
let's just say we did. And yeah, it's so good. So well done.
Even when they're meeting up as like the Black Knight and then the person from the Round Table, the Knight from the Round Table, and it's like, well, Camelot's becoming like a little too good. He's actually preaching like good and honor and stuff like that, and we can't have that. And he's like, so they just sent us out here fighting the mud. It's like what a pain in the
Yeah.
ass for both of us. But I like how at the very end of this episode, towards the end of this episode, Aziraphale's telling Crowley like, we got to go kill this kid. We'll go out there, you kill the kid, and then we're good. And he's like, wait, no, I got to kill the kid. He's like, well,
Right.
you're a demon. It's fine. Your hands are already going to be dirty. It'll all work out for everything. And then Crowley's kind of at the point where he's like, no, dude, you need to get your hands dirty. You're not an angel like you think you're an angel as much. You know what I'm saying? Like you're not Gabriel's
Right.
level, and you keep trying to be at Gabriel's level. You're just not that.
Yeah, yeah. I also took it like if heaven takes care of the Antichrist, you've then taken care of the worst evil, thus the purpose of an angel. You know what I mean? So it's like,
Right.
it's just, he just, it's not manipulation. It is a little bit,
It's
but it's also
tempting.
like, yeah, it's tempting, but it's like justification for the
Yeah.
action. And it's very hard to kind of argue against either one of them on the reasons. When you start looking at it, you're
Yeah.
like, oh, wait, that does kind of make sense. Like, yeah, that's a little messed up. Yeah, that's evil, but he's not wrong. So
Right.
maybe I can see what he's saying, and again, just really good, complex, thought provoking writing. I dig
And,
that.
and it's a good relationship writing too, because we could see this like in married couples, right? There's a lot, or even in friendships. There's a lot of times where there's one that's kind of more engaging or giving in pushing the relationship forward or progressing situations. And here we
Right.
see Crowley, and we've seen it multiple times where he's like engaging. Okay, do you want to do this? And he has to almost ask for Aziraphale's permission, almost to kind of like, are you cool with this? Obviously, clear thing. And at that point in the story, it's like, we have broken the rules so many times. Don't you see that it's you and me now and not the rest of the world, not heaven or
Right.
hell? And it's
Hmm.
still Aziraphale's trying to keep his hands clean. And it's like, he's exhausted. And that's, I think, kind of I think every relationship, your past girlfriend, boyfriend, friends, or whatever, there's a point where you're just like, look, I need you to just choose the restaurant. I'm tired of always being the one that picks the restaurant kind of thing.
I was hoping you'd go there, and you are correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes you're like, okay, wait. Every night at 6 p.m., we do this song and dance where, I pick the meal, or I pick the restaurant, or I pick the food. And yeah, at some point, you're like, can you just pick it? Like, I've done it every night for
Yeah.
whatever, however long we've been together. So it makes sense, and it totally feels like, yeah, it's finally justifying, like, come on, to your point, get your hands dirty because we've been working at this together. We've been making these things happen together.
Yeah.
So come on, just take that step. Just step over
Yeah.
the line.
I really enjoy it. Do you want to start digging into the second half of the episode then?
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
then again, like 28 minutes into the episode, then it's like, okay, here's the intro. We're like, what? Okay.
Yeah.
So where does it stop before that? Oh, they meet in London, I think. And he asked him for something like an insurance. And Crowley is asking
Yeah.
Aziraphale, and I think he's saying, "Hey, ask for insurance." And he slides him the letter, and it's
Mhm.
holy water.
So that's a running thing that's been kind of building up. There's the whole bombing scene of the Nazis that was kind of during that phase two.
Ooh, that's
Um,
a good scene.
it
I do
really
want to talk
is.
about that.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I do kind of want to talk about that too because we see that the demons in hell do have holy abilities because they're all fallen angels. It's just not as strong anymore. And I like how the little bit abilities he uses is to protect I think it was the briefcase or whatever it was for.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, that's nice. That's just being a nice guy, knowing that he's going to want that at the end.
Right. And he's supposed to be the evil demon,
Right?
who like was bringing on the Antichrist, but he saves his friend's books because he knows he
Books, that's what it was.
appreciates it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's whatever the prophecy books, right?
Yeah.
And then there's the whole, and also like tying in this fiction with real life events. Like I'm such a fan of that. Like I guess they call
Yes.
it like revisionist history, but
Yeah.
like
I
I
love those
love.
though.
Right? Isn't it just
Yeah.
so cool? You're like, but what if in history it went down like this? And
Exactly.
that little thought for me is always so interesting, and it takes my mind down such crazy corners and turns. I
Mhm.
love it so much. And again, that part with the Blitz in London and then meeting up with the Nazis is just like, just oh man, that was so good. And then he's like
Yeah.
jumping around in the church because he's like, ah, it burns.
Burning
It's
his
like,
feet. Yeah.
yeah, because it's all holy in here and I can't step here. Like all that stuff is so
Oh
good.
man.
It's so good.
In
So
the same
yeah,
vein of that, I'm always a big fan of, because I grew up Catholic today, but I always love when you could tell like a story that's, biblically based, but you're just like, you're in the in between stuff so that you can have fun. Like the whole unicorn situation. And it's like,
right.
yeah, who's to say that's not real? Whatever. It's not blasphemous. It's just having fun. And because we know the story so well, it makes sense. One of my favorite books that I've suggested countless times to people is called Unholy Night. And nobody else wants to read this book, and I love it so much. And it's basically, what if the three wise men, one of them was essentially one of the assassins from Assassin's Creed, and the other two were
What?
thieves. Yes, and like it's like Aladdin and Assassin's Creed mixed together, and they're hanging out with Joseph and Mary because they're trying to escape the law, and in the process they find out, the power of Jesus, yada yada yada, of like
That
wait a
they
minute,
have, yeah, the
so but
savior Messiah.
yeah, so by the end you got like, you know, Ezio assassin. By the end, he's like, all right, I'm gonna sacrifice myself to the Romans to help this kid out so they can dash away. It's so freaking cool.
Wow,
And it's
spoiler
like,
alert.
it really does, like, it really does, he survives. There you go. There's a spoiler alert.
Okay.
But it really does play out like an Assassin's Creed game. And I'm like, why is this not a movie? And so anyways, because people would bitch and complain about it being biblical, but it's just fun.
Right. And yeah, man, that does sound super cool. I do some degree understand why people would be sensitive to this kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah, to your point, went to a Christian private school. It was church every Sunday. So I'm very familiar with the stories. And I think this is also why this episode works, because
Mhm.
a lot of these stories are so, they're just ingrained in us. Whether you're, a religious person, a devout Christian, Catholic, whatever, you kind of know about the three wise men. You kind of
Definitely.
know about Noah's Ark. There's even some, I felt like there was some Indiana Jones references in this as well.
Absolutely. Right.
Remember they
Yeah.
were throwing that in when they were asking for the book, and then they were like, "We got the Dial of Destiny" or whatever they were
Yeah,
saying.
they were dropping
Yeah,
a bunch of things. We're like, I think that's it. I think they talked about that in Indy. Yeah,
yeah,
because it's
yeah.
the same thing. It's the Nazis wanting everything magical to be able to just like hook to a front of a tank and shoot. You know?
Yeah, 100%. I think that was a nod to Indiana Jones if I
Yeah,
had to
I think
guess.
so
I couldn't
too.
find anything in writing that says it, but if I had to put my money on it, I would.
Yeah.
But yeah, because these stories are so iconic, it kind of grounds you right away, and
Mhm.
then allows these characters, because they are kind of silly for being these
Yes.
all-knowing, ageless beings, they get to be a little bit silly, and the comedy just works in it because it's so ridiculous.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like Crowley has snake eyes every time. Like even when he like lifts up his visor as a knight, he has snake eyes.
Yeah,
How are
yeah.
people not stopping him for that?
Right.
But it's
I
like,
was thinking about that.
I
Yeah.
lived long enough to where I can avoid people seeing my snake eyes. Or he's always wearing sunglasses normally and stuff. But it's just kind of funny that it's just like, yeah, I'm immortal. Even when Aziraphale's about to get his head cut off, and he's just like, oh, the paperwork. Basically, that's his reaction to
Right,
it.
right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Does it ever explain if he did get his head chopped off by the guillotine in the Bastille, what happens to them? Did we find out that in later seasons
They
or
both go
in
to heaven and hell frequently, so I would assume they would just go back to
Oh,
heaven and then come back at some
okay.
point. I think it's
Okay.
yeah, I think that's what happened.
Very interesting. Okay, so then we are brought to the modern day.
Yeah.
And now we're kind of caught up with what has been set up in the first two episodes.
Mhm.
We get to see the modern day versions of all these characters. There's Shadwell, the witch hunter.
Yeah.
There's Newton Pucifer. How do you
It's
say his name?
something like that.
Pulsifer.
Pulsifer, that's it.
Pulsifer.
Yeah.
Yeah. We get to see like the later generations of him. We get to see Anthemia. I don't know if
Yeah.
that's how you say her name. Anthemia
Anthemia
Device.
device. Yeah.
Yeah, we get to see her now. Man, in this episode, I love so much her, whatever it was, like great grandma
Hmm.
was the witch who created that true prediction book,
Yeah.
whatever Nutter's prophecy book. I have it written somewhere.
Right, which is actually the name of Good Omens book, is the true and righteous whatever. So like when you read the story of this, it's all the witch telling you what's going to happen in the future.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Dang, I gotta go back and read the book too.
I know I
That's
have
so
to too.
cool.
It's like literally in my stack of books I got to get to at some point.
Yeah, that's so. But there's the one part where, and I don't know if it's in this episode. It might have been in one of the first two, but there's like in 1980, you must like get a hold of the apple that no one can eat.
Yeah.
Right. And then they're
Yeah.
like, and then we bought 5,000 shares of Apple in 1980, and that, now we're millionaires because of it. I love
Yeah.
that. In this episode particular, though, they go, in 1974, do not buy or yeah, do not
Avoid
buy
the
Betamax. Or yeah, avoid
Betamax. Yeah,
Betamax.
avoid the Betamax.
Yeah. Who's Peter Max? I don't know.
But avoid them.
Yeah, exactly. Which is hilarious because if we know about Betamax, right?
Yeah.
That was supposed to be the thing over VHS,
Yeah.
but just through a crazy story in itself, Betamax didn't exist, VHS did, and we are in the timeline we're living because of that. And so,
That might be a good little history thing like we did last week, guys. Let me know, by the way, feedback on that one.
That was solid.
That might be something that we do, but that would be a good one too, actually, right there. The history of Betamax.
Yeah, I might be a little biased, but I thought you crushed it, so that was really great.
You are a little biased.
But we're kind of
yeah.
just catching up with everybody, right?
Right, yeah. So the witch is, she's frustrated because she's like, look, I lost these predictions and stuff like that, and I'm supposed to stop the world from ending, and so she's freaking out. And then the boy who comes up, who we know is the Antichrist, but he's Adam in this. He's supposed to be named Warlock, but that ended up going to the wrong kid's name. So he's Adam.
Did you find it was weird that we have an Adam and Warlock, and we have a Marvel character, Adam Warlock?
Oh, snap. I didn't think about that. That's a good point.
That's what I was thinking the whole time. I was like, is this like a
Great
ripoff
catch.
of Adam Warlock because of the Sandman and the DC connect? I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into it or finding connections where there really
Still fun
isn't
to
any.
think. Yeah, still
That's
fun
what
to
I was
think.
thinking the whole time I was hearing that, though.
But yeah, so he comes up, and then I like how she has like these conspiracy books that are not really conspiracy books, but they're just. When I was young, there was like a bunch of books that came out that were kind of like, these are X-File type real life stuff, and
Yeah.
conspiracies now have such a more dirtier reputation that they did back in the day when it was all about Bigfoots. Like that was the fun times. Now it's not so fun. But she has a bunch of these magazines. So this kid's reading them, and some of them are about global stuff, like actual dangers, and some are fake. You'll learn about those in future episodes, by the way.
Right. Which is
Yeah.
hilarious how they're grouping them together. Because
Exactly,
That,
yeah.
that scene where she's kind of spiraling out, telling Adam when she's in the house, and she's just like, global warming. Oh, don't even get me started. Or like the
Yeah.
food shortage, or they're putting microchips in whatever. It's like some things that are obviously ridiculous,
Yeah.
and some things where you're like, well,
Follow that one up, yeah.
yeah, exactly. Could
What
you
was
explain
the-
that a little bit more?
Tibetan people are spying on us in tunnels or whatever was one
Yeah,
of them.
yeah.
Which again they answer later on in an episode. But so as Adam dreams, because he's the Antichrist and has the ability to create these miracles, he makes them come true. So one of the books he says or reads is about like, oh, a world without any nuclear powers. Meanwhile, while he's eating candy before he goes to bed, and immediately I'm jealous at how fast he goes to sleep. Like he just like closes his eyes and he's asleep, dude.
Yeah.
I miss that.
Yeah, in my adult life, I have never fallen asleep that fast.
I
and
wish
as peacefully.
I ruined a night last week because of fucking TikTok. I tell you, that TikTok could ruin a night's sleep, man. That's terrible. Oh man, but yeah, so he ends up dreaming that. So then all of a sudden, all the nuclear power plants are missing their nuclear cores, but are still producing the same amount of power. And in there is a piece of candy, the candy that he was eating, and it's just kind of like, oh, okay, it's just something he can do, and it's crazy.
Yeah. I love the premise of what if the Antichrist just went to the wrong family. Like,
Yeah.
and it's just an interesting concept too, where maybe he won't become the Antichrist if he's raised by regular people or nice people.
Yeah.
It's just interesting premises that they get to play with here. And yeah, right now, at this point, at least in this episode, it, it's TBD. We don't know if he's going to
Right.
turn full evil. There's like little hints where you're like, ooh, that kind of feels a
Yeah.
little evil, but you don't really know. I mean, he has this dog, cares about the dog, the hellhound of it all.
Yeah.
But his friends are kind of a little bit more evil than he is even sometimes. And his parents
Yeah.
actually mean well, it seems like. Like, but that's kind of like the
They're
typical,
dismissive. Yeah, but
yeah,
yeah.
dismissive, like, oh, whatever, the boy's being crazy kind of dad. But the mom definitely cares about him.
Yeah.
So, all intents and purposes, he kind of has good parents. So, yeah, I like what it's teasing. And I'm
Right.
really that little morsel, I mean, you can call it a lemon drop, is very interesting if you want to like taste that and carry it on to the next episode, which for me it definitely did.
The it's funny that you can't tell the difference between is this Antichrist or just an average 11-year-old. Like his moves, his personality, because it does escalate quickly. I'll tell you that
Yeah.
much, obviously. And yeah, so you're not sure, like, wait a minute, and would an 11-year-old who found out he could do this be acting like this, or is that the Antichrist coming through? I think a lot of it's 11-year-old. And then there's another little tidbit that I thought was pretty cool, where the witch could see auras for everybody, and she couldn't see his aura, and it's because
Yeah.
his aura is the size of UK. It's just that she's in the middle of it; she can't see it because she's in it. And I was like, oh, that shows how powerful it is. Like, how anime is that, right? It's so cool.
That makes so much sense. I watched that scene twice and I didn't understand until you just said it there. Because I was like,
Yeah.
oh, why is the UK just like a giant bubble? It's because that's his aura because it's so big. Thank you. Thank you for
Yeah.
clearing that
Yeah.
up. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not smart enough for all of Neil Gaiman's uh, like writing
Bro, you know how many
tricks.
times I had to reread Sandman stuff? Like, that got me so mixed up.
Oh my God. Yeah, dude. We've talked about this before, I think, but if you listen to the audiobook while
Yeah,
reading it, what an
that's the way to do
experience.
it.
Like that show when it came out on Netflix was one of my top 3 favorite shows of that year, but that experience was just as good with the
Mhm.
audiobook and reading it in the graphic novel. Oh my
Yeah.
God, so damn good.
All right. So the other main guy that we're following along in this era is the witch hunter. Gosh, what? Oh,
Young
Newton
Newton Pulsifer.
Pulsifer. Thank you. That last name's a little tricky.
Mhm.
And yeah, he's like a nobody, right? That's kind of his whole thing. Is like, I'm just a nobody that's got a nobody job,
I
and he
mean, he's
runs
just
into
a
this.
down and out of luck guy, right?
Yeah,
Like he's trying really hard, and everything he does kind of just fails, and or he gets fired, and it's like you feel kind of bad. I mean, I felt bad for him.
absolutely. Yeah, and we know that his ancestor was a witch hunter that is the one that ended up attacking the witch. But he runs into this lunatic essentially that has this whole witch hunter crew that he's just basically making up names on the ledgers so that he could try to milk money out of two different sides that don't know that they're both paying for the same guy. And you could tell he was never plan on going to that town, right? You notice how
Yeah.
he's like, oh yeah, I gotta go to town, sure thing, sure thing. And it was never gonna go. But then when this kid's like, I need to go to this town, it's got really good weather. Then he's like, does it happen to be this exact town? Like, screw it, I might as well be good about this.
Yeah, like go for it. Because I mean, for him, it's like who cares,
Yeah,
right? He's like, if you find something great, if you don't, then I
yeah,
kind of figured. So it's like whatever. And yeah, he's interesting, right? And we could
right.
see he's even crazy when it goes back to the '70s. Like he's part of
Yes.
that weird Soho Interpol. I don't know what you
Yeah,
call it,
they're
but
gonna
like
do a
some
heist or
weird
whatever, and
heist from a
they don't know the
church.
heist is for water, but that's what he wants out of it.
Yeah.
Uh, One of my favorite things about this, though, again going back to what would happen if the Antichrist wasn't raised by a senator from the U.S. I like how that's the worst case scenario. By the way, that's how you can make an Antichrist is you have him raised by a U.S. senator. Um,
Right. Shout out to
but
Nick Offerman though.
right out of nowhere, he's awesome in this random show. But I do like how the kid finds out. It's like, actually, it's like always perfect weather. It's always snowing on Christmas Eve. It's always so somebody's manipulating the weather to make it perfect, not what you would think of the Antichrist: constant storms and metal music and stuff like that. Like, no, it's just how he would want it, and because
Right.
he's not the Antichrist evil mode, it's not hellish weather. It's just perfect all the time.
Right. Yeah, I love that. Again, man, I feel like I was just saying new game and new game and new game, but it's like what an interesting thought, when somebody could be so evil, but the way it manifests is in something perfect.
Yeah,
And that's what tips him off, which is cool. Like it's such
yeah,
like all of this stuff was like ooh ooh ooh. I felt like I was just like
yeah.
finding Easter egg after Easter egg in this, and yeah, that was great.
I just want to wrap things up. I think, discussion wise, going back to Aziraphale and Crowley, because their relationship is kind of the entire point of this whole thing, and we see that it's getting to the point now where yeah, Aziraphale, like I mentioned before, wants to have to just kill his kid, and he knows the four horsemen are being called up, and like they're running out of time, and Crowley's no, I don't want to get my hands dirty. If you haven't seen the rest of this show, what do you think's going to happen next?
Ooh, I think they find a way to work together to avoid the apocalypse because there's a season two. And
Well, that's fair. Damn.
yeah, but I don't know how. And I
Yeah.
think I think the kid doesn't become the Antichrist we think. And so because of that, heaven is preparing for a battle. Hell wants the apocalypse. So now it's the ramifications of you guys stopped the apocalypse. Now you're not on heaven's side, you're not on hell's side. You're against both of them. What does that look like? That's
Mm,
if I had to just make a theory.
yeah. Okay. I'm not going to tell you because you got to watch it, but
Yeah, yeah. Oh, happily, happily.
yeah, yeah.
That last conversation though, where they meet up in present day and they're standing in that gazebo area,
Right.
uh, that conversation is so well done too.
It
You
is.
get to see so much range from both of these actors and the way they play off each other. The way Crowley or David Tennant gets to kind of be rageful, but also try to be manipulative at the same time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then also Michael Sheen be innocent but also aware of what's going on and
Right.
aware of what the possibility of what his actions need to be is very interesting. Man, I love that scene so much because I feel like they just get to go for it.
If you get a chance, I want you to rewatch that scene, but now think about it this way. Crowley's being vulnerable and asking him almost to come with me in our friendship beyond the sides. And it's Michael Sheen's Aziraphale who's being the one that's tempting and kind of conniving and sneaky with like, you get your hands dirty, the war will be done. They're both playing the opposite character at that point with their mannerisms, their own mannerisms, but they're both like not themselves right there. It's these two are perfect role, perfect. There's a fun fact for other casting that was supposed to be here, but these two I think are far better.
Man, you just Oppenheimered my mind. That was crazy. Yeah, I didn't even think about it that way, but you're so right. In this moment, they've almost switched sides
Yeah,
in terms of like personality. Wow, so good.
yeah.
So good. There's one other thing that happens too that's kind of big towards the end of the episode, which is we meet another one of the four horsemen. What is it? Dr. Raven Sable or Famine,
Batman. Yeah.
and shows up in a diner scene. Again, classic gaming. One of
Yes.
the best stories in the Sandman is
Favorite
the
one. My absolute favorite one is the diner scene.
oh my
Absolute
god,
favorite. I
that is
love it.
so crazy. I really like what they did in the show. I
Yeah.
liked it in the book too, which was
Hmm.
a little bit different. I can't remember the specifics, but again, such a classic gaming where you see something so sinister happen in
Oh,
a American staple that it's just like, oh, let's go get waffles, let's get a
yeah.
burger.
Very Americana. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so Americana. Like,
And
oh,
this is too like even it's like all white and red. It feels like some sort of 50s diner still.
yeah, yeah.
But meanwhile, they're pitching something that's like this is from like Idiocracy. This is like so dystopian what they're pitching. So it's great.
Right, exactly. It's chow. Don't
Yeah.
say food, it's chow.
Press
And
this button when you bring the chow over, which is like basically what the list of things they say at the end of
disclaimer.
pill commercials. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. It's for like intestinal issue pill or something almost, Yeah, it's
Yeah.
so bad, but yeah, so interesting. We get to see famine, but we're starting to see the different four horsemen. And at this point, for me, I've seen this FedEx guy who seemingly has a job to deliver packages around
Yeah.
the world. His territory is anywhere he needs to be. But I love this actor that plays Famine. He's great. I can't remember what I've seen him in
A bunch of
either.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, he's been in so many things. It's such a great Yusatef. I don't know exactly how to say his first name, but really great actor. And yeah, it just kind of sets the scene that these four horsemen are coming together, and we get to also see how they're manipulating society too, right?
Yes.
War gets all of those the nations or diplomats to end up killing each other in the tent, and now famine is making people basically not buy food and
Mm.
barely eat anything because that's what he wants. He wants everybody to starve.
Yeah. And I
So
like how
good.
it's not that he's trying to get them to, he's not like making crops go away. He's making humanity not want to eat. Like that's like he's almost getting off on that. Like he's trying to manipulate them
Yeah.
beyond it. And wait until you meet the next two. The next two are, in my opinion, are even cooler because they change up one of them from what's in the Bible to something new. Like, oh,
Oh,
this one retired and now it's replaced by this one. You're like, oh, that's perfect.
this one
That's exactly.
retired.
Yeah.
Classic.
Yeah.
That's so good.
So
Uh,
gaming. How
yeah,
gaming is
yeah.
that?
Totally, totally. And I would say the narration as well
Yeah.
is so well done because it's fun, it's funny, it's interesting, and it progresses, but it's also like omnipresent. And what is it when you know everything?
I
What's
think
the
you're
word I'm
right.
looking for?
Omnipresent, right? Or
Is that what it
omnipotent.
is? Omnipotent. Thank
Yeah.
you. Like that. Yeah, it's just so good. Oh
I
man.
believe the narration is done by God. I think it's
Mhm.
God doing the narration, played by Frances McDormand.
Frances Vidor. Yes, exactly. Well, she's an amazing actress
Oh
herself.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So
Um,
so good.
so finish watching this. You got to get into season two. I'm about halfway through season two. I already got spoiled on the big like shock and awe at the end of season two. Thank you, X or Twitter or whatever you want to say. I
Yeah,
messed
man,
that up.
you're getting sucked into those X TikTok, black holes that are ruining everything. It's also kind of
Yeah.
nature of the business, but thank you for challenging me this and also for not spoiling it because I'm super in for the rest of this season and definitely that's going to carry into season two.
Yes. If you guys want more of something similar to this too, by the way, it's a show kind of called Staged, and it's a pandemic era show, and it's all about Michael Sheen and David Tennant both stuck at home and like working on future projects together. And you actually see Michael Sheen as himself, which is very much not a Zarafil. He's much more actually much more like David Tennant. They're both very similar, and the way they
Okay.
are always making fun of each other. And if you want to follow them on TikTok too, there's one particular one where they both are making a painting, and I don't want to go into it. I'll explain it to you afterwards, but it is
Okay.
hilarious. So watch that, guys. It's called Staged, and it's only like 22 episodes, and a lot of it's like on TikTok. So it's totally worth
Nice.
watching.
Maybe we have to link that in the show notes.
I will do that. That's a good idea. Yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. And then there's also like our flag. I'm just looking at all the recommendations and I'm like, yeah, our flag means death is a good one too. Okay, so let me go ahead and get into the fun facts.
Fun facts. Let's go.
Before I do the fun facts, you had a question for me. Did you already ask it, or was it the why did I
I,
choose this
I
episode?
yeah, I
Okay, I'm
did.
sorry. I
Yeah.
shouldn't have like. I didn't know that was the question. I ended up.
You said it, and I was like, okay, cool. I don't have to ask a question.
Sorry about that. All right.
You omnipotent being.
There you go. All right, here's our fun facts. I've only got a few for this one, but let's go ahead and get started. According to Neil Gaiman and co-author Terry Pratchett, I know we said Gaiman 500 times, but Pratchett
Mhm.
too. Gotta give the Pratchett's last request before his death in 2015 was for Neil to write this into a screen adaptation. Previous attempts to bring this book to television failed due to their not being able to write an adaptation that is able to mix the spirit and humor of the show. It, as you could imagine, this is very hard to adapt,
Oh
and
yeah.
so they tried multiple times, but that was Pratchett's like last hope. And it's like you got to make this thing into a TV show.
Yeah. One, that's so cool that he was able to do that for his friend. And two, I mean, it was the same situation for the Sandman. It took them forever because they thought, oh, we're not going to be able to get the right scale. We're not going to be able to present hell correctly, or we're not going to be able to go to these different settings. So yeah. Pratchett, he's the one that came up with the story, right? And Neil Gaiman did
Yeah,
the screenplay for it. So again, the WGA, freaking Hollywood, pay your writers because
pay them
this
up.
show wouldn't exist without it. But I think he does such a good job of that. Like he collects the humor with the drama, with the stakes, with the religious aspects and
Yeah.
weight. God, it's so good.
I believe they both wrote the books together. I'm not. I could be completely wrong. It looks. I think they're both co-authors, but I could be completely wrong.
Oh, okay.
All right. So here we go. Terry Gilliam. This is my big one. Okay, get ready for this one.
All
Terry
right.
Gilliam tried to adapt this into a movie several times over 10 years before admitting defeat. He came closest in January 2002. He had two people already cast for Aziraphale and for Crowley. Can you guess those two people? 2002.
Into uh, Sean Astin Scott, who's another American Pie actor. Like I don't know.
Oh, no,
Uh,
man. Bigger
yeah,
than that.
big.
Robin Williams for Aziraphale.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Holy
Johnny Depp for
crap.
Crowley.
Damn, that actually would have been really cool.
Yeah.
I was assuming when you were like teeing that up, I thought whoever they're gonna say is gonna be dumb, but that actually would have been pretty amazing
It's hard because it's like I think the casting we have for this show is like pretty spot on,
for
but
sure.
that might actually be better. Like that was pretty amazing. Those two play those
Yeah,
characters pretty well.
totally. Yeah, it's hard to say. For me, it's like hard to say better. Maybe it would have been better for sure, but
Yeah.
it's like it would have just been so different. And we know knowing what we know about Robin Williams now, not only was he absolutely hilarious, but he could do drama. He could do serious, weighted scenes. He would have been sick as Aziraphale. And then, of
Yeah.
course, we got Johnny Depp, who's also shown he can be funny and he can do drama. And yeah, oh man, that would have been great. Have they ever done a movie together? I gotta look
No,
into
and
that.
unfortunately they won't now, but yeah.
Right. Well,
Um,
not if Hollywood gets their way with AI.
well, that's true. Again, pay your damn actors. Sign the contract.
Right. Yeah.
Uh, to further explain this, so Terry had raised $50 million to make this project happen. He just needed a
Oh,
studio to punch this through.
yeah, yeah.
The
To
problem is it became post 9/11 and pre, get this, Pirates of the Caribbean. And so studios told him, one of the studios said, he said multiple told him the same thing. Nobody wants to see a Johnny Depp movie. Yeah.
what?
Because before Pirates of the Caribbean, he was like the Robert Downey Jr. thing too. He's like, he's
He's
done.
kind of untouchable.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so crazy, right? Man, more as we've been doing this for a while, I read so many stories about that. It's like nobody ever wanted to work with Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah.
I mean, now everybody wants to work with Robert Downey Jr. It's like that kind of thing. It's so crazy. It's
Yeah.
just,
Gotta give people second chances, guys. Look what happens. You get an Iron Man and you get a Jack Sparrow out of it.
but it makes me wonder, like, who are these execs sitting around Hollywood that's like, "Pff, I've seen Johnny Depp. That guy can't do crap. You're like,
I know.
what?
Well,
Like, who are
I
these
think
people
that
making these
people have to be
decisions?
desperate. Like Marvel was like, we're gonna make our first movie that's not with another company, and so they're like, we need somebody that's kind of cheap. We know who's a good actor, but just cheap right now. Boom. That's why you get Robert Downey Jr. And then you got Disney, who's like, we're gonna make our movie based off of one of our rides. Like I think there has to be kind of like we're already gambling thing, maybe. I would
Yeah.
love to interview like some of the execs behind this after they pay their actors. I would love to interview some of the
Yeah,
execs behind
yeah,
this
totally.
and see what was in this decision. That would be very interesting.
It would be. It would be so interesting. Dang it! I had another thought on that, and then it just poof, it poofed away like a evil miracle.
The final scene with that Michael Sheen filmed was season one, of season one. I'm sorry, was the Nazi scene in Hard Times where they bombed the church.
Oh
He
wow!
had to excuse himself often to cry in between because it was like the final day of filming with his friend and stuff. So like he would be crying
Wow,
off to the side all the time during this because it was like it was hard on him.
that is interesting because he kind of has a different demeanor, and when he goes into that meeting with those Nazi agents, he's kind of deceiving them, right? Like he
Yes.
knows that, or at least he thinks he knows that there's
Yeah. There you
American
go.
agents waiting. And
Yeah.
then, of course, he's like, okay, send them in. And he's like, well, I'm waiting.
Double
But
cross.
he is kind of being a little deceitful. And he also thinks they're doomed. He thinks they might die because of the bombing. He also thinks he has lost his treasured books. It, it has a different feeling for his character, which you wouldn't normally get in the middle of a season, so that
Yeah.
I could almost feel that, which is interesting.
Yeah, he in his kind of personality too in that scene too is like kind of almost cocky in a way too at some points. He's kind of all over the place in it's very
Yeah,
different than he's normally is.
right.
All right, Adam. I got two more for you. Sorry, Adam's.
Yeah, let's do
They
it.
were supposed to be short, but these are really good ones. All right, Adam's earthly father's name is Mr. Young. His license plate reads 510RAT, which reversed is TARDIS, which of
Oh,
course is the
nice.
time traveling police box for Doctor Who, which is
Yeah.
basically why David Tennant is a household name.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. All right. Lastly, and I think at this point you probably have already experienced it. I know in the final ones it's definitely there. Most music throughout the series is Queen, which is actually my favorite band. That's a fun fact about Challenge Accepted. This is a
Fun
running
fact about
joke.
Frank right there. That I
Yeah,
didn't know. I like that one.
yeah.
Five
This is a
stars.
running joke in the source book in which every cassette tape ever left in Crowley's car for a fortnight magically turns into the best of Queen. So he just always like he can't keep a cassette in there that's not Queen, so he's always listening to Queen, which I would be down for. I was
That's
in high
awesome.
school driving around with my big truck back then and blasting Queen. You know, Fat Bottom Girls, everything. I love Queen so much, so I was always doing the
Yeah,
same thing.
that's awesome. Yeah, I was gonna say the music and the score of this, it definitely sets a mood and a scene also. Like I think the best of movies and shows do that.
Yeah.
They set a feeling based on the sound. Again, not promoting Oppenheimer, but like Oppenheimer did that very well with the sound and everything. This show and The Sandman, there's a certain tone and a feeling. It's kind of playful but kind of dark. And if
Yes.
you have watched the Bohemian Rhapsody, you kind of know that behind the scenes where he's
Ooh,
like, let's
yeah.
do a rock opera.
That's a really
You
good
know,
movie too, by the way. If you guys haven't seen
it
that yet,
is.
that is really
Rami
good.
Malek killed it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that rock opera vibe still
Mhm.
really works. And it works great for the show. I love that.
I've got so many stories about Queen, man. Like me and my buddies are all major Queen heads, and just like fuck,
Well, maybe
we
we
have
do
we have
challenge
owned bars
accepted.
before, just like Bohemian Rhapsody all night long, and got people pissed at us.
It's
Yeah,
great.
definitely should be challenge accepted or something like that. That'd be good.
Just yeah, $100 in the jukebox, Bohemian Rhapsody.
We pretty much have done that. Yeah.
Nice. You
Yeah.
Crowley.
So, Crowley. So check that out, guys. Again, I want to throw out there. It definitely feels somehow to me like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy as well. You know, it's something about it. It might be the British humor. So I want you guys to watch it. Let us know what you guys think about this show. And season 2 is out now.
Yeah. Do we want to break down and I guess not break it down, but do we want to give our review?
I'm
A
cool with that.
quick
You
one.
want to do? You want to do the review? You want to go first?
Yeah. Sure. I don't know why I volunteered. I
You
have
just did
nothing in
though,
my
sucker.
head. Yeah, exactly. I have nothing in my head. Let's see. This show completely went under the radar for me. And now, after watching it, I feel a little tempted and obsessed. The acting is phenomenal. The
Mm,
friendship is so engaging and so wonderful, yet the themes are so twisted and dark. It's at times very confusing as to what it is, but it works beautifully, almost like peanut butter and jelly on a burger. I highly
Yes.
recommend it. If you've read any Neil Gaiman or read or watched The Sandman, this needs to be on your list 100%.
Yeah, it definitely does. All right. So I will say, uh, Good Omen is whimsical and joyful and a break from the day to day. It knows it's having fun with itself and it doesn't mind inviting you in. If you like Neil Gaiman, if you like British humor with a twist, I think this is a good pickup for you. Keep an open mind while watching it. That's about
Boom, it's over. That was great.
it.
That was also a line from the show. So,
All right. What are you challenging me to?
all right, yeah. So the next challenge, we've talked a lot about some of our favorite things, and I don't. We kind of dipped our toe into a little bit of anime. Why did I
Yeah.
say that weird? We dipped our toe into it a little bit with Kiki's Delivery Service,
Mhm.
and I wanted to challenge you to my favorite anime. And I've been watching anime pretty much my whole life, but for some reason, this thing just like gets me, and it just like every part of me loves this anime, and it's My Hero Academia.
I've started this. I got to catch up to it. What episode are we watching?
So we are watching season one, episode one,
Yeah.
and I think you've already started it,
I
but
have seen that
it's
one.
yeah, but I still want to revisit it because I think it does a perfectly it does a perfect job of setting up the world and the main characters and just the whole franchise moving forward. And then there's a counter to it, which if you know anything about All Might, which we see in the first episode, it's kind of one of the first episodes we get to see All Might really shine, which
Okay.
is episode 12, and I think it's titled All Might.
Okay. Cool, cool, cool. Yeah, I've been going crazy through Attack on Titan lately, so I'm like in an
Oh,
anime
it's
phase
good.
right now. So this is
Yeah.
this is the good time to do this.
You know, okay, there's a lot I like about Attack on Titan, but My Hero Academia still takes the cake for me. And I've watched Dragon Ball, Mobile Suit Gundam, uh, I don't know, you name it, I've probably watched it. But man, My Hero Academia, I don't know if it's because it speaks to the X-Men fan in me, but also
Yeah.
like anime and the action, but oh, I love it.
I
Yeah,
think that's what an Attack on Titan. There's so much of the fantasy part of it that I like a lot and stuff like that. So there's always something right for everybody. And then
totally.
I will say Attack on Titan though. I every time I'm always like, why did they make the freaking Titans look so goofy? Like there's just like randomly like running down the streets like shaking their hands up, and I'm like,
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
supposed to be scary, but I'm laughing my ass off at these guys right now.
Yeah, yeah, that's the thing, and that's a good point because I feel like My Hero Academia is a really funny show. Like
Yeah,
it's pretty like the comedy. It's a little dirty, but
yeah,
maybe because I have the sense of humor of like a sixth grader, but it makes me laugh so hard. And in the first episode, it does it. But yeah, we got to talk more anime. I'm happy to do it, and
for
yeah,
sure.
My Hero Academia. Let's kick this off.
All right, guys, join us episode 1 and episode 12 of season 1, My Hero Academia. We'll see you guys next week. Bye.
Aloha.